Hi, my name is Husnara Begum. I'm the Associate Editor at Cheeky Little Careers and also a career coach. I'm really pleased to say that I've been joined for this video by Phil Sanderson, who is a former City law firm partner and now runs his own coaching practice where he works with senior leaders in the legal sector and private equity sector, amongst others, helping them to transition from, I guess, mid to super senior level roles, but I'm sure Phil can describe that in more detail himself. The purpose of this video is to talk about partnership and how you become a partner in a law firm and what factors you should consider before committing to it. Phil, firstly, how are you?
I'm great. Long bank holiday just passed. I'm able to see a garden on your screen, which is filling me with joy. So no, I'm very good and looking forward to our conversation.
So why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself firstly?
Okay, just very quickly, I studied law at university. I then, probably at about the age of 22, I guess, started at Travers Smith as a trainee, became a partner when I was 7 and a half, 8 years qualified. Um, uh, Ended up running their private equity team, very successful private equity team when I was 38. Um, I guess 5 or 6 years after that, I then was very treacherous and left the wonderful Travers Smith to go to the wonderful Ropes and Gray, and ultimately ended up being one of the co-heads of their global private equity team before, at the start of last year, after quite a lot of reflection, actually, deciding I wanted to step away from being a lawyer and everything that entailed to helping people more sort of directly. And that's where the idea to coach came from. So I've been coaching for the last 15 months.
Great. Okay. So you became partner at a quite low PQE level. So you said 7 years PQE, which is pretty fast by modern standards. At what point did you think, yes, I really want this?
Embarrassingly, when I was a trainee, I feel embarrassed to say that. I shouldn't be, because it's just being honest, and I think that I get the sense that there were more of us in my generation that was the way that you thought. You joined one firm, and you know there were plenty of examples. Actually, as I said, I ran the Travers Smith team when I was 38, and every single partner in the team had been a trainee at the firm. So there maybe that was in part because of the firm that I had joined. But I was ambitious. I looked at I guess how I was performing, how I thought I was performing in my own head, compared to others in and around my intake. And I thought, yeah, I'm doing fine. It's a sensible aspiration. And so yeah, so quite early on.
I don't think you should be embarrassed because I had similar aspirations when I first joined my old firm as a trainee. Because you're right in that I think back in the day, partnership was seen as a sort of pinnacle of your career, and it was probably the only definition of success that existed, which really upsets me to think that was the case. Whereas we now know that success is something you define and it can comprise anything, including working away from law altogether like I did, or taking a sort of slightly sideways move and potentially moving in-house or working in a non-fee earning role, etc. So before you continue watching this video, I think the main message here is that partnership is just one way of
Yeah,
progressing your career and reaching your full potential, but
yeah,
lots of options exist. But yeah,
and
for me, the decision came about 3 years PQE where I thought, I don't love it.
yeah.
Um, but at the time, I was worried that people would see me as a failure for not sticking with it, which is really tough. But what was your experience?
Well, I didn't have that at 3 years, and I didn't even have the thought of moving firms or the like at that sort of stage. I mean, that maybe that came a bit later. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but no, at about 3 years, I was just very much classic. Just got married, very ambitious, working hard, not as hard, I think, as many 3 year associates do now, but that's how it felt. I mean, I think your point about the different options is such a good one, in the sense that I think that then it felt that was less the case, actually. I wish I could, but I can't off the top of my head remember the name. But I went to speak at a university, I think it was Durham University, about careers in law, and at that point I had in my head how many in-house lawyers there were at about that stage in my life, and there were probably less than 100 in the UK. I mean, now, I mean, you know, it's exponentially changed, and I'm saying this with absolute genuineness. I think that many of the most talented lawyers that I have come across are GCs. It's such a wonderful place to see business, you know, firsthand. And I genuinely do not have a bias towards just following the course of becoming a partner.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have changed course if the options were greater when I was young. I don't really know, but you know, there are lots of options now, and I think one of the things that students and young lawyers have to bear in mind is don't just think that they are only doing this to become a partner. I mean, that wouldn't make
That's
sense.
really sound advice. I like that, because even if you don't stick with it, the skills you learn and the network you develop working as a lawyer are amazing. Like I know from my own personal experience, I don't
Yeah.
regret joining the legal profession. It sort of made me who I am. Anyway, look, let's talk about becoming a partner, because that's what we wanted to focus this video on.
Yeah.
Talk me through what you think are the key considerations that a mid-level associate needs to really go away and think about before committing to this, or at least thinking they want to commit to it.
It's again, it's a big question. I mean, because there's so much, and I think it's wrong to be too prescriptive about it. But I think it's, I don't know, this might end up being a good or bad analogy. But if you equate it to, say, 4-year preparation to win an Olympic gold medal, and I'm not equating becoming a partner of a law firm to winning an Olympic gold medal, but stick with me, then, you know, obviously to do that, it doesn't just happen. And so at the start of, let's say, the 4-year cycle, you are very thoughtful, possibly with coaches, possibly with peers, about all the things that you might need to be able to do by a certain stage, at the key stage. So let's say at the stage that you are then being considered for partner. I think that's probably quite a healthy way of looking at it. It doesn't mean you have to set in stone anything, but you just start reflecting on how you need to develop, how you need to train yourself to get to that point. And that will involve all sorts of things. I think it will involve being aware of what you are and what you're not, and maybe forcing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Sure.
More often than not. I mean, but people, you know, in my world as a coach now, people often will talk to me about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, and so the classic, right, for an associate looking at partners: do I belong? Can I belong? I'm not really like them, or maybe not, but I think a lot of people will think a bit like that. And you've got to think like that. So imposter syndrome, obviously, it can become extreme and difficult and challenging for people, but everybody has imposter syndrome, because it's just about pushing yourself beyond your normal sort of network, your normal skill set, and challenging yourself to grow. And so, and you shouldn't be embarrassed about that. You should, from a relatively early stage as a lawyer, think, okay, to be a partner, if that's what I want to be, where do I have to develop, and what do I have to think about? I sort of see why this might be a bit circular, because that's sort of the question that you asked me. And so I would put it down to having conversations, talking to lots of people, partners particularly, about what the job is and what it entails, and learning. And if there are things there that feel very alien, outside of your comfort zone, then try and learn something about that. So that could be financial, it could be strategic, it could be to do with client development skills, it could be something, much more forensic about, your lawyering. But, what you're really trying to do there is what you're trying to do there is you're trying to make the best of yourself. You're not, and this is the final point I'll make on this meandering advice, you're not trying to mimic or make yourself a clone of a partner. So the mistake I think that a lot of people make is, if I can't be like X or Y, then I'm not a partner. I don't belong, because X and Y are the most successful partners and they're who other people are looking up to. I think that's a big mistake. So what I think most academic research has shown is that the successful people mimic behaviors of lots of different people.
Mm.
So you don't have to find somebody who, I didn't have to find somebody, because I didn't feel like I had a mentor when I was 3 years qualified as a lawyer, but I was watching, I think, what successful partners were doing at Travers Smith, and probably borrowed things that they were doing for myself, where I thought they worked for me. So it's a sort of chameleon approach to how you look.
I love that point about, if you don't have that sort of mentor within the workplace, then watching and mimicking and borrowing, as you say, the best bits that you think would work for you is a really good way of investing in your own sort of self development. What about other factors that don't relate to skills and your knowledge? What does being a law firm partner mean to you in terms of, ultimately, if you're in an all equity partnership, you obviously become a, you share the profits, but you presumably have to also share the risk. What non-skills related considerations do aspiring partners need to think about?
That's a really good question. I, it's such an overused term, that I'm almost loath to sort of go down this alleyway. But commercial awareness, I'm often asked what it means, and I have a lot of people, partners, graduate recruitment people included, who will often talk about commercial awareness as reading The Economist and the FT and understanding what is going on in the business world in that sense. And I speak from somebody who has never read business pages, and on the other hand, I was always thought to have a lot of commercial awareness. So I think that's a red herring. You heard it here first. I think that commercial awareness is all about the ability to step into the shoes of your customers and your stakeholders, actually. So as an associate, it's stepping into the shoes of partners. What do they need from me? How can I help them? What is their life currently looking at, and what can I do to make that better, if that's what you need to do? And clients is very much like that. So, it's not thinking, what can I sell to clients? It's what are clients looking for at the moment? What is in my niche market? What do they need from a lawyer? What is valuable? And constantly asking that question. And I think that that's what the best partners are doing. So that sort of commercial awareness and finding mentors, if you like, to build up that awareness is very important. On the other side, there is just and not everybody has to do this. I think partnerships are now very different, in the sense that there are people who more manage within partnerships, and there are people who are just great lawyers, and so that there's nothing more to say about those great lawyers, I don't think. The managing sort of side, though, it is this ability to be able to step back, and as a partner, and think of what is the best for the partnership. You're a steward of a law firm, I think, more than an owner in many ways, and understanding at an early stage and evidencing in your behaviors that you get that is a really important part of becoming a partner, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about being a partner in a law firm compared to being a senior leader in other organisations is that one of the key sort of changes to someone's day-to-day responsibilities when you become a manager is that you become less of a subject matter sort of expert and you focus more on managing people. Whereas as a lawyer, I think that is quite different because you are still expected to be the best of the best in terms of your knowledge of the law and commercial awareness, whilst at the same time managing people and a team, being the owner of the business. How do you juggle all of that successfully? And how do you prepare to take on the additional responsibilities of running a law firm as well as being the best lawyer?
No, I think it's a constant battle actually, and there's no silver bullet as to how you do that. You're completely right though, and so you've got to be aware that you are constantly in a dance between your client responsibilities, your learning responsibilities, and your business responsibilities, and that's really the answer. I think you just have to be aware that that is going on. I mean, one of the things that I do I regret? I think I do regret is that over the last 5 or 10 years, I learned a lot from a business perspective, and obviously I went from a silver circle firm to a real big law firm in Ropes and Gray, and that taught me all new things again, for which I'm very grateful. But I would still say that over the last 10 years of my legal career, there were parts of the job of being a lawyer that I stopped trying to learn about. And I think that this, in people that I coach as well, is very common, that you get to a certain level of being an expert and being a good lawyer, and then you want to make yourself bulletproof, and you're an expert, and so you don't even ask anybody questions, you don't ask for help. And I'm pretty passionate now. Definitely a message that I get back to a lot of partners that I speak to is why don't you ask for help more? What's your next learning project? Because that then will provide this balance in this dance between the business, the client, and the learning, because we all as human beings, I think, crave development in that sense. And if you don't have that, then suddenly I think you're getting it slightly wrong.
Who do you need to have in your war cabinet to help you go through this journey?
Both
at home and at work.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it very much depends from person to person. Because I think it is family and friends as well, and always has been for me. My dad was probably my sort of biggest coach, and still is. But one thing that I would say is if you're picking a war cabinet or a board of advisors, whatever you want to call them, I think it's really important to find people who respect you, support you, know you well, but are also willing to call you out, are also willing to challenge you, also willing to give you sort of help with dealing with the specific problems that you're having, not just say, oh yeah, no, that's always a problem for lawyers, or no, I remember when that happened to me, and but also finding that war cabinet that actually that knows that that's not enough. Yes, show compassion, show understanding, but also say, right, so how are we going to deal with it?
Yeah, no. And what about the year leading up to your partnership? What were you expected to be doing? What does the process actually involve? I appreciate that what you experience would now be quite different to what firms have, and obviously the processes differ from firm to firm. But if you had to pick out themes, what would they be?
Yeah, but I've seen lots, obviously, of people coming up to partner through, while I was running teams. So I think one of the main points I would make is people have to, at that stage, because of the planning they've been doing, because of the thinking, reflecting that they've been doing, because of the hard work they've been doing, come with a pretty clear idea of what they are and what value they can bring.
Sure.
And then be very authentic about doing that. Authenticity is a really interesting thing, I think, in this discussion, because a lot of people use it as an excuse for not building their network, not, quotes, selling themselves to people internally because they don't think that's authentic. Why is that? You know, if you are, quote, selling yourself or building your network in a way that is very much centered around your identity, what you want to be, how you're going to add value, then why isn't that authentic? So even if it's uncomfortable, this is back to growth mindset, I think,
Yeah.
and imposter syndrome. Even if it's uncomfortable, you have to find your way during that final year to appear to be a potentially good steward of the business. So not aggressive, not doing down other people that you're maybe competing with, all of that sort of stuff, but also, you know, being pretty progressive in terms of pushing who you are and who you could be as a partner so that people can really see what you're going to be.
Yeah. And then presumably in terms of the formal stuff, you've got some sort of assessment day, I guess. You've got to do a business plan.
I think I think I'm right in saying that even that depends on the firm.
Sure.
But if you have got to do a business plan, then my advice would be get help.
Okay.
Because you know you're super smart if at the age of 7-8 years qualified you can write a business plan that is pitch perfect for the audience that you've never really spoken to about a business plan.
Yeah.
That's genius if you can achieve that, and yet that's what most people try to do. So find somebody who you can work with, you know, a partner, but also it could be a coach, could be a mentor of another kind of, and think of the ideas that you're presenting as part of that business plan and try them out.
Yep. So I think the other point about the business plan, which I think is really important, and it's certainly something that so many associates mention to me who either choose not to pursue partnership or sadly their firm has told them they're not going to get it and they've reached an agreement to leave, obviously on good terms. And the subject matter is business development. So a lot of people say, I don't want to be a partner because I don't like business development. Others will say that I've not been made up to partner because I'm not good at business development. Why are people so afraid of it? And what tips do you have to become better at it? You already mentioned the commercial awareness and putting yourself in the client's shoes and seeing what they want, seeing the world through their lens. For me, the challenge with business development is the sector has changed and now more clients have formal pitches. The relationships are more institutionalized rather than developed on the golf course, etc. So how do you develop business in 21st century economies?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, firstly, I think that a lot of this in my career has come down to a reaction against, and a completely natural reaction against, the sort of rather masculine approach to business development. So you mentioned golf courses, and I play golf. You know, having drinks, going out for a beer, going to the pub, taking somebody to football matches, to boxing match, all of these sorts of things that they can be seen as very male, and I think, you know, without necessarily consciously deliberately formulating business development in those terms, I think men who have traditionally ran law firms have been quite comfortable creating that sort of that bias, if you like, and so I completely understand why a lot of people have had that problem. I mean, I remember my wife, who was at Travers Smith with me, was told in a very early appraisal by somebody who is a partner not at Travers Smith but another firm now, oh, you should just be more like Phil in business development. And that made her want to leave almost on the day, because she was Oxford educated, far smarter lawyer than I was, a litigator. I was a corporate lawyer, so very different anyway. So what on earth that meant, you know, I've no idea, but it really hurt her and made her very disrespectful of or doubting about business development generally. And I don't think that's a completely one-off story. So that's sort of got that bit over with. And then maybe to the practical sort of side of it, I think that there is such a scope, and you touched on it, the way that clients choose their lawyers now is much more multifaceted. I mean, there will always be people who want to be able to play golf with somebody or get to know somebody watching a game of football. And in my view, there's nothing wrong with that, because that's about building a relationship. But those same clients, and lots of different clients, have many other reference points, many other things that they are passionate about, or that they want to build a relationship over. And it could just be that BD is about writing. It could just be around just being, going back to the commercial awareness, being very, showing yourself to be the person that is always thinking about that client and what might be interesting to them. But that's got nothing to do with, do you want to go for a drink and then talk about it? No, it can just be an email or a telephone conversation or something through social media. So I think that there's actually no excuse for lawyers to get to 7 years, 8 years qualified and then say they don't want to do BD.
Yeah.
That shows that they haven't understood what BD is, I think. And I say that having started in a very deliberate way of showing how this can be difficult, but there's no excuse. You can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when you mention the phrase BD, you talk about networking, it feels like, as you say, about taking a client to the pub, going to a football match, and that feels quite unnatural, especially for some women who perhaps prefer having one-to-one conversations. And the same with networking. Whenever I mention the word networking, people always wrongly assume that it's about going to lots of events. Yes, that's part of it, but for me, it's about individual relationship building that's reciprocal. But being a nice person isn't enough. You've also got to be quite solution focused and present ideas to your clients that will help them solve a problem that they might not even know exists, because you're ahead of the curve. And that doesn't mean you need to be the loudest and the most confident person at all. And again, that's one of the other pushbacks I get when I mention the word BD, which is, oh, I'm not confident, I don't like selling myself. And it's not that at all. It's a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah, it's much more sophisticated. So everybody that I know would definitely describe me as confident, but I'm also almost certainly an introvert. So I hate drinks receptions. I definitely lose energy when I'm with too many people for too long, like a partner conferences and things like that. Like lots of lawyers, that doesn't mean you can't have commercial awareness and EQ, which helps you be a good at business development. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. And you can be authentic.
Let's come back to partnership, because I could have a separate conversation with you about BD and networking, etc. What have you? It sounds to me that you've had a very, well, not sounds, it is. You've had a very successful career as a partner in 2 different law firms. What have you enjoyed the most about it, and what would you have done differently in terms of lessons learned?
I think we should at this point tell the audience that you haven't given me any of these questions in advance, because that's another good question, which I'm now going to have to think
I'm
about.
a journalist. This is my job. I'm supposed to come up with good questions.
I've loved so much of it. I think that I'm going to say that one absolutely obvious point is that it's given me and my family financial security. It is remunerative. It's an attractive career in that sense. And so it always amuses me that people almost sort of belittle that. It's not to be belittled. It's a hard career. There's a lot of hard work involved. So, part of it is the financial reward. But in terms of specifics that I've enjoyed, I mean, so many things. But the thing that possibly is interesting, and it maybe is a clue to why I ended up doing what I did, is I'm often asked by journalists about, what's your favorite deal and why, and all of that sort of stuff. And I really struggle with that question. So I'm really glad you didn't ask that question. And because deals sort of come and go, to me, they're sort of a bit like waves, and you're watching them from a cliff top, and they come and go. And there's the odd really good wave, which is important in your career, and I had a few of those. But by far the most enjoyable things, and what is more than waves, is the friendships and the people that you help, and you enjoy the company of, and you learn from. And I've been lucky enough at both firms to have people that do still, mean a lot to me, as a result of working for them, with them, leading them, over good times and bad. So yeah, definitely, from partnership, for me, that's an important thing. And I mean, just hearing myself say that makes me realize how, in some ways, the precursor to your question doesn't really cover that. It is about, ultimately, being successful in a business world is about making really good connections.
And what about things you wish you had known, or things you'd have done differently?
I wish I'd known more about. I wish I'd known more about people, because I was always on the front line of working with people through appraisals, as leader in rooms, in teams, and yet now, as a slightly wiser, older 52-year-old, I understand people a lot more than I did when I first became a leader at 38, and that would possibly would make me overthink it, but I don't think so. I think it would just make me have made me a more patient, more calm, more understanding partner. It's not that I was a sort of leader that shouted at anybody. I never shouted at anybody in my life, but it would have probably helped me sort of see other people's viewpoints better.
I'm really glad you said that, because, as I said, whenever I talk to lawyers about partnership, BD comes up, networking comes up, having a niche comes up, but people skills don't. And I think that, to be successful as a senior lawyer, whether as a senior associate and especially as a partner, you need to be able to manage your people and your clients, because they're also people.
Yeah, I love the legal profession. I very much see it as a profession as well. But there are a lot of weird people in it. There are. I mean, and there are a lot of people who are more than happy to just shut the door on their office and work on their own in total silence all day. And there are other extremes. There's a. I'm not saying that that's the stereotype, because it isn't. But there are lots of people who are. Who do things which other people might go, interesting. and yeah, so the people side of being successful is, it's really bizarre how underrated it is, because it's the most important thing.
Agreed. Now, the other final point that I wanted to discuss with you was law firm finances and law firm economics. I thought it'd be quite fun if I just threw some words at you and you can explain what they are. Okay, go for it. So let's start with PEP. What's PEP?
PEP has become probably the globally number one driver for measuring performance in law firms, because it's profits per equity partner. So it's broadly like a sort of a divvying out all the profits to the people to whom that profit would go to, and so it became, I think it was the lawyer in the UK that made a big thing of PEP, and I think for good and bad, actually, because it's made the business of law now very, very profit focused, which I'm all for winning. I'm all for profit. I talked about financial security being very, very important, but I think sometimes in the hands of the wrong people, it can be overused.
Okay. What about revenue per lawyer? What does that mean? And how important is that as a measure of success?
I think that is. I'm not going to give anything particularly insightful, but as it said, revenue per lawyer doesn't just go to partners. It's it's every revenue. We know what revenue is, and per lawyer is everybody at the firm. And I think it's often quite a good way of sense checking PEP and whether PEP has been manipulated, because if the revenue per lawyer is very low and yet the PEP somehow seems to stay where it is, you would ask questions about, well, how are they?
Cost cutting, yeah. What about what's a fixed share partner?
It differs in different models, but fixed share partners is almost you're a partner, but you're sort of not a partner. So you're not an equity partner who shares in all the profits at the end. You're a fixed share partner. Usually the model is that means that you get you have a pretty set fixed deal on what you're going to make. You might make bonuses as well, but you're not, if the firm, for example, has an absolute bumper year because of a big deal or case or whatever, a fixed share partner may or may not benefit from that, whereas an equity partner will.
Okay. Leverage
is something that I can't have in my business because my coaching business is just me. So there is no leverage. So a leverage again became hugely important, has become very, very important as a way of looking at what profitable business is. Because if you imagine a partner is able to, on their own, work with a client on a deal and have 10 lawyers, including relatively junior lawyers all the way up, working on that, then that's what leverage is. So you could have a deal which is, say, 10 to 1. So the number of hours spent by a partner compared to associates is 1 compared to 10. That's very likely because of the economics of what you're paying associates and the partnership model. That's likely to be very profitable.
Okay. And what about the partner lockstep? How does that work? Because you've got most equity partners the firms will have a top of the equity, bottom of the equity, and they'll have a split depending on, and you have points based on the number of years you become a partner. Can you explain that a bit more, please?
Again, I think this has really evolved. So, there really used to be a pretty hard and fast lockstep at a lot of English firms and American firms. And that sort of, so if you like, at Travers Smith, I'll sort of describe that. When I went in as a partner, I was a sort of fixed share partner, but I got given 40 points. And by the stage that I became a partner, the top partner got 100 points. So the differential between 40 and 100, maybe that sounds like a lot, but if you think that some of those 100-point partners were rainmaking, very profitable partners, that's a very equitable model, and that's what I had. And then as I went through from being fixed partner to equity partner in 2 years, I think it was, then you get 50 points, and then every year I just went from 50 points to 55 points to 60 to 65. So I went up 5, and you couldn't do anything other than that. As that model, I'm genuinely not either trying to or give any secrets away about that particular model. But as with many other law firm models, then there were stepping stones along the way. I'm trying to think of a better word for it, but there were sort of thresholds you had to get through to get to sort of higher up to the 100-point partners. And there were also ways in which the lockstep was managed a bit more carefully by management to make sure that the right people were getting, the fair amount of money.
And what about, just finally, the eat what you kill? What does that mean? Because that's different, isn't it, to lockstep?
Yeah, and sometimes it can come into lockstep in the way that I just sort of ended up talking about how locksteps are quite often have some sort of flex. So they'll have, a pool of profits which are allocated to the highest performing partners. And what does highest performing mean? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean eat what you kill, but eat what you kill is a reference to if you have gone out and built a huge amount of business for the firm, and yet because of the lockstep, you are only getting, 60 points, you're on 60 points, you're a young partner who's just absolutely killed it, then, you know, an eat what you kill policy would try and flex that to make it more fair.
Sure.
It can also, and I think this is where your question was coming from, you could have an eat what you kill policy full stop, where everything was just based on what year on year you do in terms of business. That's very aggressive.
It's the purest, and some would argue it's very fair as well, because you keep,
Yeah.
you know, it incentivizes you, but as you say, it's also very aggressive. Anyway, look, I'm afraid we're out of time. Sorry if I put you to the test, but I thought you gave some very sound
I hope I passed.
examples. Thank you very much for your time, Phil, and I'll see you soon.
And thank you for the conversation. It's been great as ever.
Thank you.